It's unbelievable the degree to which our sanity depends on a functioning sociological structure. And here's why. Well, first of all, you kind of need to know what to do every day. You have to have a routine, because you're an animal, and if you have a dog or a cat, dogs are a really good example of this. Dogs like routine. They like to be walked the number of times a day that they're supposed to be walked, and they get quite sick very rapidly if you don't routinize their days. Children are exactly the same way. Now, you can overdo it, right? But still, you need to know approximately when you should get up. It should be approximately the same every day. You need to know approximately when you're going to eat. You need to know what you're going to eat. You need to know who you're going to eat with. You need to know where to buy your food. It's like 80% of your life, 70% of your life, something like that, consists of those things that you do every single day, that you repeat. Well, so you need structure, you need predictability, and you need more of it than you think, just to keep you sane. Now, if you're lucky, and maybe a bit odd, you can deviate 5% from the norm, or 10% from the norm, or something like that, carefully and cautiously, as long as the rest of you is all well-ordered in a normative manner. You might be able to get away with that, and you might be able to sustain it across time, and people might be able to tolerate you if you do it, or maybe you'll get really lucky and you happen to be creative, but reasonably well put together, and people will actually be happy that there's something idiosyncratic and unique about you. But even under those circumstances, mostly what you want is to have a routine that's disciplined, that's predictable, and bloody well stick to it. You're going to be way healthier and happier and saner if you do that. And then the other thing that you need, because this is one of the things the psychoanalysts got wrong, I think, is that they overestimated the degree to which sanity was a consequence of being properly structured internally, Because from the psychoanalytic point of view, you're sort of an ego, and that ego is inside you. And of course, it rests on an unconscious structure, but the purpose of psychoanalysis is to sort out that unconscious structure and the ego on top of it, and to make you a fully functioning and autonomous individual. But there's a problem with that, because the reason that you're sane as a fully functional and autonomous human being isn't because you've organized your psyche, even though that's important. The reason that you're sane if you have a well-organized unconscious and ego is because other people can tolerate having you around for reasonably extensive periods of time, and will cuff you across the back of the head every time you do something so stupid that people will dislike you permanently if you continue. And so what people are doing to each other all the time, just non-stop, is broadcasting sanity signals back and forth, right? It's like you smile at people if they're not only behaving properly, but behaving in a way that you would like to see them continue to behave. You frown at them if they're not, you ignore them if they're not, you shun them, you roll your eyes at them, you manifest a disgust face, you don't listen to them, you interrupt them, you won't cooperate with them, you won't compete with them. It's like you're blasting signals at other people about how to regulate their behavior so frequently, well, it just makes up all of your social interaction. That's why we face each other, and we have emotional displays on our face, and we're looking at each other's eyes, and we know as much as we can about what's going on with each other, given that we don't have immediate access to the contents of their consciousness. And so partly what you're doing with your routine is establishing yourself as a credible, reliable, trustworthy, potentially interesting human being who isn't going to do anything too erratic at any moment. And everyone else is around there tapping you into shape, making sure that that's exactly what you are. And that's how you stay sane. And so what happens to people too, if they don't have a routine and they get isolated, is they start to drift. And they drift badly because the world is too complicated for you to keep it organized all by yourself. You just cannot do it. So we outsource the problem of sanity. And it's very intelligent that we outsource the problem of sanity, because sanity is an impossibly complex problem. And so the way that we manage the incredibly complex problem is we have a very large number of brains working simultaneously on the problem all the time. Maybe you decide you want to clean your room, and it's a hell of a mess, and you're working with the therapist, and he says, look, just open one of the drawers and look at it, because you've been avoiding it for 5 years. That's all you have to do this week. Open it and look at it. And, on the one hand, that's so trivial and it's pathetic. But on the other hand, no, it's not. And so often the person will come back and say, well, I did it, but it was just stupid. It's like, no, it wasn't. Your room isn't clean, but you opened the damn drawer. And now it's time to give yourself a pat on the back. But to do that, you have to admit, in some sense, you have to admit how pathetic you actually are. You know, you have to admit how pathetic you are before you can reward yourself. And that's okay, because that patheticness, well, it's sort of built in to the fact that you're vulnerable. You know, and you need a small step and you need a reward. That's okay. It's okay that that's the case. You know, when you see people, what they'll do is they'll say, well, that's just a good indication of how useless I am. You know, that's all I could do. So they punish themselves. Well, then you have an opportunity. You say to them, look, there's two things going on here. You can't clean up your room. That's a problem. But you also can't reward yourself properly. So we need to take that apart and fix that so that you can reward yourself properly. And that's also why, you know, when I suggested to people that they clean up their rooms, the reason I did that was because I actually knew how difficult that is. Because to get your room in order, there's no way you can get your surroundings in order without simultaneously getting yourself in order, at least to some degree. And it's for exactly the reasons I just discussed. What you'll find is the reason the mess is there is because of psychological mess. You know, assuming it's not, you didn't just move or something, you know what I mean. There might be obvious situational contributors, but generally speaking, is the mess, the external mess, is absolutely isomorphic with the individual mess. And so it's really powerful to order and beautify something in your immediate environs. It's unbelievably powerful to do that. You learn a tremendous amount. You also may find, for example, maybe your family's dysfunctional. And part of the reason that your room is such a bloody mess is because if you ever took any steps to address it, they would punish you. Because as soon as you start to clean up your room, then you cast a dim light on their mess. And so they see you taking a step forward, they're going to whack you because now you're an ideal that's judging them. So you deal with someone who is in a dysfunctional family and you ask them to do something positive to move forward, and then you watch the resistances that emerge, and you've got a picture of the pathology in the family, and that can help the person start to